the world's biggest mining project just came online. This dug-up mountain is starting to supply what's called the caviar of iron ore. It's deep in the jungles of Guinea, but it's at the center of an international power play with China. And what it took to get here is mind-boggling. Nearly 30 years of politics and scandal, more than 600 kilometers of railway, and a deepwater port built from scratch. Hey, my name is Luis, and today we'll look at Simandou, a new gigantic mine scarring the beautiful Guinea highlands. One that reshapes the global steel market and changes a country forever. Steel is the backbone of the modern world, and basically everything we feature on our channel. Railways, bridges, entire city skylines, they all depend on mankind's mastery of steel. It's a key ingredient in nearly every mega project. The Burj Khalifa, nearly 40,000 tons of steel. And the Three Gorges Dam, over 400,000 tons. But we rarely stop to think about where all the steel comes from. So let's look upstream for a moment at how steel gets made. This is the simple version. First, it's mined from the ground as iron ore. That rock is then crushed into pellets, then heated in a blast furnace, separating the iron from everything else. Next, the molten iron is refined, taking out the impurities and adjusting the carbon level. The result is steel. Some countries mine their own iron ore to make steel, many others import it. It's shipped around the world on these massive ships called VLOCs, or Very Large Ore Carriers. The name says it all. These behemoths can carry up to 400,000 tons each. Western Australia and Brazil are the world's biggest suppliers of iron ore, but now there's a new player in town. This is Simandou, in southeastern Guinea. It's not a country we've talked about here, probably because it's a lower income country that hasn't historically seen a lot of big infrastructure projects. But this now changes. Simandou is in a part of the country known as the Guinea Highlands. It's a dense jungle mountain region that's home to many endangered species, including the West African chimpanzee and the Diana monkey. But it's also home to the world's largest untapped reserves of high-grade iron ore, and they're starting to extract it. Simandou is a 4-block open-pit mine. Open pit just means it's what you think of when you imagine a mine. Machines and miners blast and dig up the mountain, finding iron ore rock in the mountain's rich red soil. Then they crush and screen it. The mine already started shipping its first ore in December 2025. Operations are still ramping up, but by 2028 it will be churning out 120 million tons of iron ore each year. More than any other single mine. Yet, have you heard of it before? Its total capacity is at least 3 billion tons of iron ore, and the whole mountain range could hold more than 8 billion tons. Those numbers have long made Simandou extremely valuable. Too valuable to ignore. You see, the iron ore was discovered there nearly 30 years ago. But since then, efforts to develop a mine stalled and failed for years, as the country dealt with bribery scandals and coups. And there was a costly problem standing in their way. How do you get the iron ore from this remote mountain area to buyers around the world? Dirt tracks have long been the only way to get here. And when the region's heavy rains and thick fogs move in, the roads are basically useless. So what does it take to transport all of that iron? The answer is about $23 billion, which makes Simandou one of the largest infrastructure projects ever attempted in West Africa, and the most expansive mining project in the world. Now, there's no way Guinea could have financed this on its own. They needed an investor, and as we've seen in so many spots around the globe this past decade, China stepped up. Here's how it works. Simandou's 4 different blocks are split between 2 different companies. Blocks 1 and 2 in the north are owned and run by a Chinese group called Winning Consortium Simandou. Then blocks 3 and 4 are run by a consortium that's half owned by Rio Tinto, the British-Australian mining giant, and half by another Chinese firm. Then, to make the math a little more complicated, Guinea owns 15% of all of it. But overall, China is by far the largest player. The challenge for Simandou investors was getting the ore from the mountain to the coast. After it's dug up, the ore travels on a conveyor belt 2.5 kilometers down to a stockyard and railway. Then it's loaded onto train cars and shipped to the coast, which is no small journey. The new Trans-Guinean Railway cost $8.8 billion and runs 600 kilometers. It takes the ore from Simandou and brings it across the country to the port of Morobaya. There's also another 78-kilometer rail spur connecting the main rail to mine blocks 3 and 4 in the south. Once the ore finishes its train travel, at Morobaya port it's loaded onto barges that bring it 20 kilometers out to a deep-sea anchorage. You see, the waters off Guinea are shallow and silty, so a port right off the coast would have required massive dredging investments. Rather than incur those costs and delays, investors chose to use a barge system to get past the shallow waters. Morobaya is a $4 billion new project that includes space for 2 VLOCs. Once those are loaded with ore, they start a 20,000-kilometer journey around the Cape of Good Hope, across the Indian Ocean, into the South China Sea, and finally arriving at a steel mill in China. Why China? Well, because it needs massive amounts of steel, a lot of it for the construction industry. In total, around 800 million tons every year. But China imports only 6 million tons of finished steel. For the rest of it, they mine iron ore themselves, but import even more. Then they process it in their steel mills. And that's why Simandou is so important for geopolitics. It's a tilt in power in the steel market, away from Australia and Brazil and towards China. China takes in 75% of the world's seabound iron ore, but it's long had to pay the market price set by those two countries. But when Simandou reaches capacity, it could provide more than 10% of China's imports. And that gives China financial leverage to lower the price of the ore it needs so badly. In fact, with Simandou active and other factors at play, some forecasts expect the price of high-grade iron ore to fall by over 15% over the next 3 years. Now, Simandou is big, but it doesn't hold a candle to Australia and Brazil. Together, they provide more than 85% of China's imported iron ore. Even when Simandou reaches capacity, Guinea will only be the world's 5th biggest iron ore exporter. So why is Simandou such a big prize for China? Because of its purity. We get a bit more technical, but it's important to understand. Most Australian ore has a purity of 56 to 62%. Simandou has as much as 65 to 66%, and it has less impurities overall, making it easier to process. Therefore, Simandou's iron ore will be some of the most valuable in the world. All of this creates huge new opportunities for Guinea. Between the massive infrastructure investment, the growth of mining jobs, and the ore revenue starting to flow in, Simandou is fueling the country's economic growth. The International Monetary Fund made a striking comparison. They projected Guinea's GDP in 2030 with and without the mine. According to their estimates, Simandou will raise the country's GDP from 31 billion to 39 billion. That's a 25% increase for an entire country. And it could even push it as high as 48 billion, if you factor in additional infrastructure and economic opportunities. That would be a 55% increase. Those kind of numbers could transform Guinea in profound ways, but it remains to be seen who actually profits from it. The promise of that shift has turned Simandou into more than a source of income. The president Mamadi Doumbouya turned it into a vision for the country's future. He introduced Simandou 2040 as a slogan for that change. And a Guinean rap artist in France named Black M produced a whole song about it. He raps, "I know my history, I want my share of Simandou." The video has more than 1 million views on YouTube. Real quick, if you're enjoying this video, make sure to subscribe. It just boosts the algo and helps us to produce more videos like this one. So, Simandou is poised to boost Guinea's economy, but obviously not everyone's a fan. International advocacy groups have flagged the project for its lack of transparency, as well as its potential damage to the ecosystem and communities throughout Southeast Guinea. It's fair to imagine that Doumbouya and his allies will benefit from Simandou. But will regular people? Many area farmers are already unhappy with the project. They've seen the benefit of new wells and better roads, but they've also had their fields flooded with red mud from construction. And as of November 2025, several were still waiting for compensation. However, we couldn't verify if that's still the case today. The biggest loser may be the landscape and wildlife. The area surrounding Simandou is tropical forest and home to endangered species. Building the mine and train line has destroyed habitat and migration routes for chimpanzees, elephants, gazelles and other species. The construction of Simandou is also polluting local rivers, and that could damage communities and ecologies everywhere downstream. On the other hand, there's an argument for Simandou. Remember the purity of Simandou ore we've talked about? That small difference in the ore concentration in the soil could have a big impact on carbon emissions. You see, steelmaking takes massive amounts of energy and carbon emissions. In fact, it represents roughly 7 to 11% of all CO2 emissions. But when the iron ore is pure enough, that number can come way down. Here's how. Traditionally, iron ore is smelted in a blast furnace to make hot metal, then refined in a basic oxygen furnace to make steel. Simandou ore can take an entirely different route because of its purity. It is reduced to solid iron by stripping out the oxygen with natural gas or hydrogen instead of coke. The solid iron can then be melted in an electric arc furnace. That change in workflow can reduce carbon emissions by more than half, especially if clean energy hydrogen is used. And the result is green steel, which is in high demand and already part of a growing market. But the technologies of low-carbon steel are still emerging. For now, the high grade of Simandou ore means it'll be processed with less fuel, already saving some emissions and potentially much more in the future. So what's your take on Simandou? Are the social and environmental risks too high? Or could this project be a game-changing opportunity for Guinea? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, I really appreciate it, and we'll see you in the next one.